Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Grow Wire podcast. I'm your host, Fritz Nelson. I hope all of you have remained safe and healthy during this time. I first want to note that this podcast episode was recorded prior to COVID-19 closures and shelter in place, so our levity should be taken in that context. Everyone at Grow Wire extends our support for those impacted by coronavirus, and we encourage you to visit growwire.com for advice, tools, and stories around managing business, building resilience, working from home, and any other resources you may need to get through this challenging time. On this episode, we are going to be joined by Emma Diamond and Julie Kramer. They're the founders of the Instagram account turned media company called Comments by Celebs. Now, you might be one of their 1.4 million followers, or if not, maybe you've heard of the account. But people like John Mayer, Chrissy Teigen?
It's technically Teigen, but everybody says Teigen.
Kelly Ripa, Gwyneth Paltrow. Hey, I've heard of all these people.
Good for you.
Yeah, look at me. And more. I interact with that account regularly. Currently, Julie and Emma are keeping their fingers crossed for a very special follow from Julia Roberts. I would like a follow from her too.
I wouldn't mind it either.
Okay.
But I'll keep my fingers crossed for them for Comments by Celebs first.
Probably more important.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I won't be selfish. To put it shortly, Comments by Celebs started as just that. It's an account dedicated to sharing comments that celebrities have made on Instagram posts. But today, it's a lot more than that. First, it's now considered a viable source for breaking celebrity news. So this is the world of media changing before our eyes. It's also branched off into multiple accounts. Comments by athletes, comments by Bravo, comments by Real Housewives.
Fritz, that is not one of the handles. Comments
sure?
by Real Housewives doesn't exist yet. Comments by Bravo.
Comments by Bravo.
Yes.
Okay. Comments by politicians?
Nope.
Okay.
Comments by athletes.
That's a good idea. Well, there are fewer of them now, but running for president.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, there's also a podcast that Julie and Emma started, Comments by Celebs. They also have a subscription-based Patreon site for their loyal followers and have monetized the brand through partnerships with major companies. Now, I think you're going to be really surprised, I was, to find out how the two 20-something college students took their passion for pop culture, turned it into a hobby, and then watched as it naturally transformed into a full-blown business. They were just as surprised as maybe some of you are. And these women are really smart. They're savvy. Their story is really just proof of how passion matched with a great idea can be very successful. I was really impressed with them.
Same. I truly was like, man, these girls know what they're talking about, and they're killing it. They're killing it.
They are. Well, all that is coming up next.
You're listening to the Grow Wire podcast, a place where you will learn the ins and outs of growing a business, running a business, or even taking your big idea, career, or personal development to the next level. It's all possible. Our host, Fritz Nelson, the editor-in-chief of GrowWire.com, will take you on an exploration of growth through candid conversations with some of the most brilliant minds in entrepreneurship, entertainment, business development, and more. Whatever your goal, we know you'll walk away with the right tools to help fuel your journey of growth.
Okay, let's start off at the top. What is Comments by Celebs?
Loaded question. I mean, at the core of it, I think we like to think that Comments by Celebs is a media company. You know, it started as our one Instagram account, and it's grown. We obviously have the offshoot accounts, but it's really now with the podcast and everything, it's grown into a company. And if you're unfamiliar with what the handle is, the name is very descriptive of what we do. It's basically we screenshot celebrities' comments on other celebrities' pictures, and we post them. So it's become kind of a leading source of entertainment news via the comment section.
And so, like, this is, you know, and I'm quite a bit older than you guys. Luckily, this is a podcast and nobody can see how much older. But so, like, this is kind of, maybe this is a bit unfair, but, you know, kind of the modern day take on tabloid journalism, or even maybe more like TMZ. Like this is tabloid was a lot of speculative, trying to,
Right.
telescope into people's lives and sometimes make things up. You guys are commenting on real stuff that's happening in the lives of celebrities.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like TMZ or sometimes this paparazzi has a bit of a negative connotation, and our whole thing is it's coming directly from the celebrities' mouths, quite literally. It's their comment. So there's no speculation. It's as direct as possible, but a lot of news breaks on the internet now. When a pregnancy announcement used to be done via People magazine, now it's done through an Instagram post. So we're capturing that and documenting it in the way that the magazines used to, in a way.
Right, and it's coming straight from them.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I remember years ago, I was flying from Boston to LA. Probably at a time I was flying a lot in my life, so I was up in first class. I got upgraded, and Paris Hilton was on the flight. And I guess she had been at Harvard for their Harvard Lampoon's Woman of the Year. And because I'm like, why is she in Boston? But then I went back and figured that out. Anyway, she gets off the plane. And we're all walking, out into past security, and there's already paparazzi. Like, how did they know?
Right.
And they're just there, just snapping away, imposing on her life. I don't know why her mom told everybody she was coming off that flight. No, but so this is coming from them. It's not, So it's a more gentle form of talking about what's going on in their lives.
Right. It's like completely non-invasive.
Yeah.
Right. They're putting it out there. Exactly. It's not intrusive. It's not invasive. We're really just kind of bringing it to a bigger audience that wouldn't have necessarily seen it.
You've already kind of hinted at this, but how and when did you come up with this idea?
So it started in April 2017, and it was a result of an algorithm change. So back in the day of Instagram, when in the comments section, they weren't weighted by verified comments. So if a celebrity commented, it was kind of mixed in with the other thousands or at times hundreds of thousands of comments. Instagram made a change to bring the verified comments, meaning people with the blue check, to the top. And the reason they did that, which we later found out when we had Charles Porch on our podcast, and he was the guy who actually made the change, he was like, listen, if you're Kendall Jenner and Kylie comments, you're never going to see it. He's like, I wanted a way for celebrities and public figures to be able to see their own comments by their friends. He's like, I didn't realize that it was going to turn into this, So we kind of capitalized on that, and that's how this all started.
And you thanked him?
Yeah, profusely, yes.
If you listen to that episode, it's basically us just being like, wait, so we owe you our entire business. And he's like, no.
He still won't take credit
He still won't take credit.
He's like, no, you did that. I'm like, yeah, we can only do it because you made it possible.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But talk about the process of how it grew. I mean.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of times people ask us, like, what's the science? What's the formula? And this was a complete accident. Like, we did not intend, I think always at the back of my mind, I knew that this was going to be big, but we didn't, we weren't on a specific track to get here. We started it as a passion project. I very casually asked Julie if she wanted to run it with me. Like, there wasn't some intense kind of a decision around it. And I think what started to happen was as it started to pick up traction, number one, celebrities started to get on board. So they started following us, which was big because it showed this kind of sense of approval. Then from there, entertainment outlets started picking up our posts as they were citing our posts. So that started to really grow the audience. And, from April 2017 to February 2018, we had 80,000. So it was a kind of a slower growth. And in that February 2018, Kelly Ripa started talking about the account on her show, Live with Kelly and Ryan. And that, I think we both pinpoint that moment as what sparked the real growth, right?
Yeah. And then it was like not long after that Ariana and Pete Davidson confirmed their relationship on Instagram, and there was also Nick Jonas and Priyanka confirming. So it was like kind of the perfect storm of Kelly talking about us and also being quoted as a news source for like one of the biggest couples breaking of the year.
And so at the very beginning, why do you think that the celebrities started, following you guys? And was it like a self-interest on their part, or?
I think that at the core of it, celebrity or not celebrity, everybody's a little bit vain and everybody likes to be thought of as witty or funny. And we weren't highlighting the negative. We still don't. So if we're highlighting your comment, either it's really newsbreaking or it's funny. So what's not to like? Like, your sense of humor is now broadcasted to a much larger audience. It's appreciated. You're getting tons of a positive response. I think we're all a little bit conceited in that realm, and they recognize that it was safe. Like, what we always say is that celebrities understand that we are not trying to shade them or we're not trying to pick up something they wouldn't want seen. Like, it's not like that. If there's anything even remotely we're not sure about, we'll ask them. So I think there's like a real mutual kind of respect. Wouldn't you say that? That's true?
Definitely. I think also the thing that we always say is like our tagline, which is even famous people love famous people, which like refers a lot to the comments and them commenting. But it also, like, I think that's why they like following the account. Like, I think they like seeing what other celebrities are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. I don't follow that world quite as much, but even like, I think recently it was at Selma Hayek, was, somebody had commented about how much Botox she used. And she's like, oh, well, actually, I don't use any at all. And again, being a person of my age, which is about her age, I'm like, oh, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Right.
So those, there's a little something for everybody in there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's what we like to think.
But you guys started out, you guys both had regular college lives.
Yeah.
You both got degrees and things other than pop culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the time we started it, I had graduated Syracuse about a year ago, and I was starting Columbia to get my master's in social work. So this was like totally not the track that I had planned on it. I mean, when it took off, I had to defer my second year of Columbia, and Julie was still in school.
Yeah, I was going to go to grad school for forensic psychology and then put it on the back burner and graduated and started doing this full time.
Was it kind of a different form of forensic psychology?
Yeah, that's what I always say. I feel like I get to use a lot of the skills that I had when doing this. I mean, there's definitely a huge forensic aspect to like being on Instagram and finding people's comments and then having to like read into those comments. And
well, it's interesting too, because we just had a guest on our podcast a little while ago. His name's Gary Bowles, and he talks about the future of work. And in fact, his father wrote a book called What Color Is Your Parachute, which is a famous business book about careers. And the philosophy that Gary has is like by the way, he didn't go to college. But he talked about how, we go to school for 4 years, and then for the rest of our lives, we amortize that 4 years into everything we do. Like, so if we feel like a failure if we've taken a twist or turn away from that thing that we studied for 4 years and put those but it's only 4 years,
right.
Yeah.
But you guys are kind of the living proof that that it doesn't, I'm sure that college served you well. You're both very smart people, right?
You.
And so, but what you went to school for doesn't have a direct tie-in to what you're doing now.
It doesn't have to be, no. I mean, in my case, undergrad, I was communication and rhetorical studies, minor in business management. So it was definitely broader to start out with than forensic psych. So I guess technically this is in the realm. But yeah, I think that, what we always say is like, when we were growing up, or even when we were in college, for all of my college and for 3 of the years that Julie was in, we could have never thought of this as a career path because it didn't exist. Like, yeah, we could have said we wanted to work in social media, but we could have never wanted to do this because the capabilities literally didn't exist. So, yeah, I agree with that. It doesn't have to be directly on the same track.
What would you guys tell people going to college now in terms of like what you've learned, sort of getting a mindset? When my daughter was a freshman in high school, we went to a parent, orientation, and they were telling us that they need to figure out right now where they, need to start preparing for college now. And I was just like, whoa, that's a lot of pressure. Who knows as a freshman in high school, let alone, I didn't know as a freshman in college what I wanted to do.
Right.
So what advice do you have for people going to school now?
Oh, so much. I mean, firstly, that. It really, even though it's probably counterintuitive to everything that you're hearing, I would urge you to really internalize and accept the fact that it's okay to not know. And I think the beauty of college is the process of figuring it out. Like, I think less times the degree is what you end up looking back on thinking that that was the most valuable. In certain ways, yes, but more so figuring yourself out, figuring what you like, and really like treating college as that time, I think is just so, people are so quick to not be in the moment, right? Like they're thinking already on to the next thing. Okay, if I take this class, it'll help me when I'm applying to grad school. And I get it. I get that that's a real thing. But also like just enjoying the process, You're not, at our age, we're not thinking about that one class, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also college is so much more competitive now actually than when we went. And I've spoken to people who like have siblings that are going in or kids that are going in now. And it's just become when we were going, it was very competitive and very intense, and I think that's only getting more, especially because of the whole college scandal. I've heard it's affected a lot of people in their admissions, and I think that people assume that it's going to be much harder once they're at college than it is because the process of getting in now is so difficult. But once you're in, and you can move around within easily. So if you go in for one thing and then you take a class and you're like, oh, I love that, you can switch. Like it's not, you can always switch things around and move things around. So it's not, I think it's just not as permanent as people think it is.
Yeah. It's like you design this track in your mind and you feel like you're a failure if you fall off the beaten path. And that's just so not the case. That is the whole point, in my view, of college. It's the biggest beauty to realize, I thought I liked it. I hated it. Like I took an accounting class in my business management minor, and I was like, well, I will never use this skill ever. Like, at least I know that, but I didn't feel like, a failure for not really leaning into that business management minor. I was like, okay, at least I know my skills are not that,
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing is that part of figuring out what you want to do is figuring out what you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. Manage by exception or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I that's so true. Like it's equally as, if not more important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing that happened while you guys were creating this business was, in journalism circles, which is where I've lived, is, social media as a place to source content.
Yeah.
Right? And now maybe it's a little bit different in the world of entertainment news and pop culture news and sports, but and so maybe not as easy in as in other fields where people are not necessarily living their lives on social media, but finding out what's trending, tapping into the people that matter in a given industry. How do you guys keep up with it all?
I think partially it's our passion. Like, regardless of whether or not these were our careers, we would be as in tune with what's going on in pop culture because we genuinely love it. We both have been like that since we were kids. It's just a thing that we love. But you have to, we typically don't approach things that analytically, but if I were to in this case, there's definitely value and validity in understanding what's trending, meaning what has a lot of likes, what has a lot of comments, what are celebrities. If all of the celebrities are commenting on one thing, clearly there's a reason there, and kind of gauging that and how it relates to that thing's relevancy, right?
Yeah, totally. I also think that Twitter is a huge tool, and I always say that. Like, most of what we do is on Instagram, but Twitter is really important for, I think, understanding what everyone's talking about, because it's not as much just comments or whatever. It's like once you start seeing memes and once you start seeing huge conversations that take place on Twitter, that then transfers to Instagram, because that's when everything starts. The conversation is on Twitter, so I think that to have all of that information in one place helps us gauge what's going to be popular then on Instagram.
Yeah, and also like understanding emerging platforms. Like, for example, TikTok. We ourselves don't do TikTok because we're very much behind the scenes. Like you see, we never post ourselves on our page either. But when it started to become big, we were like, okay, we have to really lean into this. We did. We started becoming interested, and then we made Comments by TikTok very shortly after because we recognized that people are going there. It's becoming a very trending thing, not only in the world of celebrity, but also to our followers. So I think just understanding and like not, being able to lean into emerging platforms is also important.
I want to kind of switch gears a little bit and start talking a little bit about the business of Comments by Celebs. So can you guys talk about how you split up duties? You guys walked in here and you were posting a story, and I got to see a little bit of it in action.
Yeah.
But
So it's funny when people ask us this, because I think our answer probably sounds like we're very inefficient, because the broad answer is we both do everything. But I guess what we mean is, like, from a content perspective, we are really aligned and really both fully involved. After the content, like, we never make a decision to post something without the other. If you break it up from there, like, I do comments by Bachelor, Julie does comments by TikTok, Isabel does comments by Bravo, and we hired someone to do comments by athletes. For the podcast, Julie's the one that does all of the outlines. I probably lead the conversation. I intro the topics. When it comes to business things, Julie's a lot more behind the scenes, whereas I'm a lot more forward facing with the people via email. It's individual tasks can be broken down like that, but as a whole, we're both involved in each step of the process.
what do you guys think makes you work so well together?
I think we just have a very similar ideology on what we want to do with the business and what we want to do with everything and what we want to do with ourselves, most importantly. So when we're discussing something, we're usually already on the same page before we even have a conversation about it. And I think that just because we operate so similarly and we operate with the knowledge that we both want what's best for the business and not what's best for us, it's business first then us, I think that we're able to work extremely well together because of that.
Yeah, I think so too. Also, we always say we don't have a pride thing. If we have to get a task done, we just want it to get done. It doesn't matter who did it. It doesn't matter who gets the recognition for it. And I find that that's a huge obstacle that I see in some of our peers' businesses. It's people are so thirsty for recognition. And for us, it's we just want it done. Doesn't really matter how it kind of gets there. And when Julie says but we put the business first, totally. And what we always say is, this would not work if one of us wanted to be famous. If one of us was really committed to building our own personal brand as an influencer, it just wouldn't work. Because I, for example, am really strongly opposed to any sort of on camera. I don't want that. And that was always my thing. I didn't know how Julie was going to feel about it. And when I discussed it with her, she was like, oh, I'm totally on the same page. And thank God, because so much of what we do and don't do is dictated by that. There's a reason you don't see us doing certain red carpet thing. It's just not our vibe. And that's huge.
Yeah. I think the other thing I noticed, because obviously I don't witness you guys working, but I hear you on your podcast, and there's a natural flow. I don't know how much you put into planning those out. You just talked about an outline and you introducing the topics, but there's just an organic feel, but you're not stepping on each other.
Yeah.
You kind of pull the best out of each other. You push each other's buttons that. There's a natural flow to it that's unique for two people running a podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you. We really love each other. We're best friends. We just so happen, when we started this, we were friends, but we were not this close. We had only known each other for a year. And throughout this, we have become literally best friends. We spend every waking minute together. For the first year of running this, Julie wasn't living in the city yet, so she was staying in my apartment. We are close on a whole other level. We're intertwined with each other's families. So aside from anything business, we are very, very close and very intertwined in each other's lives. So there's a level of respect and trust there that is different than just, quote, business partners. That's just an added benefit, honestly.
Just as an aside, I can't remember one of you doesn't really watch much television.
Me.
Emma, okay. Why not? You're talking about this world. It just seemed when I heard you say that.
I'm getting a little better.
Getting a lot better.
I don't know. I just don't. I think I have a short attention span with that kind of stuff. I always feel there's something else I could be doing, even though the other thing is probably just being on my phone.
I almost think it's more impressive that she's able to talk about things that she hasn't watched and pretend she has. Than it's when we're talking about something and she's yeah, so this, and I'm how do you know that? You didn't watch it. And
Right.
she's yeah, but I saw it online.
Right.
I'm
yeah. I had listened to a few podcasts before I heard that you say that. I'm what? Wait, hold this. How is that possible?
I know. I read a lot about it, but I have to say I noticed that it's a flaw because we'll be it's not an issue on the podcast, but in regular conversations with people, there'll be references made, and I find that I lose out on some of the references. So I'm trying to get better because I do think it's important.
So how did you turn this into a business?
Yeah.
You said you're not an accounting person. You found that out.
Yes, I
Take
found
an
that out
accounting
for
class.
sure. I mean, my family is very like entrepreneurial, and I always knew I'd be working for myself. I didn't know how, but I just knew it. Like I was never going to be a 9-to-5 desk job person. Even when I was going to school for social work, I thought, okay, I'm going to be an executive coach. I'll have my own business kind of thing. I want to make my own hours. But in this world, we at first didn't fully understand how to monetize. So something that was really important for us was that we didn't want to sell out, meaning we didn't want to start doing like fit tea ads on our page just for a quick buck. Like we wanted to make sure there was this level of almost like respect and admiration of the brand and people understanding that like we're not in it just to make a quick buck. We're in it for the long haul. So one of the first things that we did was when we recognized we wanted to advertise on the page, we made sure that all ads were done in the form of comments. So, and not by celebrities. We don't ever get paid for celebrity comments, although we have been offered and like it's something like we strongly will not do. So for example, let's say Uber comes to us. What we'll do is we'll discuss what their campaign is, what they're trying to achieve. We together will make and together I mean with Isabel, you guys can't hear her, but she's off to the side. She's our third member of our team. Yeah. We do, we mock some sort of creative asset, whether that's a meme, something funny. We send it to them for approval, and then we'll design what we think their comment should be. We post it on our private meme page. They will comment on it. That's how our ad works. So they are very seamlessly integrated into the feed. Most people don't even realize, and sometimes our ads have performed better than regular content because at the core of it, it's funny. Like that's the number one thing we've realized. It's okay to do an ad as long as it's funny, non-invasive, and doesn't come out of left field. So that's how we started to monetize on a account level. And then we were approached in 2018 to do the podcast, which was something we always wanted to do because, one, we just love to talk. And also, my whole life, since I've had an iPhone, I've communicated via voice notes. And so, like, becoming so close, Julie then started to do that too. And that's pretty much primarily the way we talk. And our joke was always like, if we could just turn these voice notes into a podcast, then we were approached and it turned into like I personally, I mean, you probably know, I had no idea how much money you could make from a podcast. Like I didn't recognize the business model there. And we got into it, we're like, oh, okay, this is a thing, but we still feel like it's the most fun job in the world. And from there, it's kind of just grown.
Can you give me a couple examples of maybe your favorite ads that you guys have created?
We were doing an ad for The Hills, and they sent us an asset of Heidi and Spencer, who I'm sure most of you know are obviously one of the most infamous couple from The Hills. And it was like a very memeable picture of them. So we put it into a meme. If you go to our website, you can see our brand studio where we have all of the ads for anybody listening, so I know you guys can't see it. And we made it some sort of a meme. I forget exactly what it was. We planned their comment, which was something like MTV really playing into the joke, getting it. And it went onto the feed so seamlessly, right? Yeah. Like people had no idea.
Yeah. We just did an HGTV one too for Extreme Makeover Home Edition, which they recently brought back. And yeah, sometimes people just appreciate a really funny comment from the brand because they think they love putting a voice to a brand. So they're never, unless the ad is not in the form of what we would do, which we would never do that, they're not mad at it because they're like, oh, that's funny. There's a voice behind this brand that I know and that I like. So it seems to fit really well. We've never done an ad that I disliked.
No, I mean, like, we were thinking, okay, HGTV, what happens when we watch Extreme Makeover Home Edition? We cry when they move the bus. So we made the meme, like, me when they move the bus on Extreme Makeover Home Edition. It's a picture of Anthony Anderson crying. And we had the HGTV account comment something like every single time. And so many people in the comments are like, oh my God, yeah, that's me. Like, that's just a relatable thing.
Right. Yeah. Even if you hate what they've done.
Right.
The look on people's faces.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you didn't raise any money?
No. All self-invested.
No plans to do that?
Not right now. I mean, it's not something we're opposed to. We've definitely been approached, but I feel fortunate that I've been able to self-fund it, and I plan on doing that. Admittedly, giving up creative control even a little bit is something I think we'd have a bit of a hard time doing. So, and that comes with the territory. So.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
And most people of, say, your parents' generation might look at what you're doing and wonder, how is this a career? So how do you have a conversation with people like that?
Well, I will say it was definitely a lot harder, not with our parents, because our parents' side, like they were very supportive since day one, our family was, but other people. It was definitely a lot harder to explain ourselves and have some sort of legitimacy before there was so much traction about it. Like now we've had a lot of articles written about the business. We've been on, when Barbara Corcoran interviews you about your business model and like on the podcast is saying how she wants to invest. For a 55-year-old dad, that's like a big, that's like, oh, wait, this is actually something, they got
That's
something
credibility
here.
here.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think our ethos increased. But we kind of I think we frame it as like entertainment news is changing. And in order to be with the times, it's really important to have a good grasp on social media. And that's, we're just reporting in a new way. That's kind of the way that we frame it, I think.
How are things now versus in the early days? Like, so you have so many avid engagers, John Mayer, Gwyneth Paltrow. I'm going to say the wife of John Legend because I heard you guys talk about how you pronounce her name and I'm not going to get it right. How do you pronounce it?
Chris,
You can say Tegan.
You can say
technically she says it's Tegan, but she's like completely like washed that idea out.
Yeah,
It's
so like I'm
Yes.
tired of fighting it. Say what you want to say.
Yes, Chrissy Teigen.
Yeah. So so now that's just a normal thing. Has it normalized for you guys?
Interacting with celebrities has definitely normalized. Yes, we are not starstruck really, especially as much as we thought we would be. But how exciting this is, like on a bigger picture, like when you take a step back, has not normalized. And I hope that it never does. Like we are still so excited when something big happens or when we're mentioned somewhere cool or, if a big celebrity follows, it's not that we're starstruck, but we are still really excited because it makes us feel a sense of kind of validation. Like, oh, they get it, Like we are holding out Julia Roberts, if you're listening, for the Julia Roberts follow. Cause like that would be a huge deal. You grow up with these iconic people and then they're on board with what you're doing and they're like fans of the account. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane.
So back to running the business. So like what's a normal day like for you?
Oh my God. It's okay.
No such thing, honestly.
Here's the thing. No 2 days are the same, like truly. I can give you a day that we were recording a podcast, for example. We record typically Mondays and Wednesdays, depending on the guest. So the weekend is consisted of Julie doing different iterations of the outline, us going back and forth, kind of deciding how we want to frame it. First thing we do every morning is we check our DMs because we're really lucky to have followers that are so engaged and are constantly sending us content. So we check like, oh my God, something huge is happening. Like Gwyneth Paltrow clapped back, this has to get up immediately. Like we don't do things based on some sort of a schedule. So if I wake up at 3 a.m. in the middle of the night and I see that there's a great comment, I'm going to post it, So we do that. We kind of evaluate the content for the day. We'll go in, record the podcast. While we're doing that, Isabel will be sitting off to the side to make sure nothing huge is breaking. I think there's only been 2 podcasts where we've had to interrupt for like a giant Miley Cyrus comment or like a pregnancy announcement kind of thing. We'll do our podcasts. We typically have, a bunch of different meetings just with brands, with creative people. I think throughout the day, it's a lot less planning the content because the content just comes as it comes, and a lot more strategizing, brand partnerships and behind the scenes stuff that people may not know of and may not know of for 6 months down the line, but we try to get ahead of it.
The last few months have taught us what's important. It's also taught us what we need to change. It's the same for business. Why have a hairball of multiple software systems when all you need is NetSuite by Oracle, the world's #1 cloud business system? NetSuite gives you visibility and control over your financials, HR, inventory, e-commerce, and more, all in one place. Receive your free guide, 7 Actions Businesses Need to Take Now, and schedule your free product tour at netsuite.com/open. netsuite.com/open.
So in the beginning, you guys weren't even thinking about the business aspect of it, or at least not
Right.
as much, right? So how much of the time during the day do you spend on the business part versus the content part?
The content part, I would say, is 100% there on some level because we are always checking our phones because news could break at any time. So like we recognize and we're very conscious of like, that's the core. That's what's got us here. We will never drop the ball on that. Like people always say like, I'm sure at this point you guys just want to hand off the account and have someone else do the screenshots. And we're like, absolutely not. Like, no way. So I would say, wouldn't you say on some level, 100% of the time
Yes.
that's going on? And then business-wise, I mean, it's a solid, like, at least 50%, of our days are spent either on some sort of phone call or doing some sort of mock-up that we then want to pitch to a company.
I see why you're bad at accounting, because that's 150%.
I know.
I'm just teasing you.
You know what I mean.
No, I got you.
Yeah.
I get the drift. I just like to tease. Yeah, that makes sense. But that also has kind of changed from the beginning, right? So.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it was only content.
Yeah, in the beginning it was only content because we never thought about a business aspect of it, and then that started to creep in, and we were like, okay, we gotta start to pay attention to this side of it too. But it was definitely unexpected, I think, at the time. Now looking back on it, we're like, oh, of course it took that natural progression. But at the time, it was like, okay, we're kind of having to like not switch gears, but focus on a whole other aspect that we didn't expect.
I'm also curious, and please tell me if I'm wrong, but that over time, as the account has grown, the significance of it, the fact that you guys are sometimes breaking news, sometimes that you're a source for the other entertainment publications out there, that the notion of how you curate what you're going to put on there has maybe changed.
There's a lot of thought that goes into it. I think in the beginning we were kind of like, we saw a comment. It was still exciting to see any sort of celebrity comment because it was so much less common. I mean, the algorithm had just changed. Yes, the curation is very important, which is why I said, like, I can't imagine a world where we feel comfortable handing it off, because we have to think of our content between like news breaking, humor, or not necessarily news, but some sort of significance. Like, this isn't funny and it's not going to break news, but Mariah Carey commenting on, like, I don't know, Ariana Grande, two icons, and that's a big deal, kind of. I don't know what category it necessarily goes in, but it's somewhere there. So we're conscious of how we curate the feed, although at the very basics, we're kind of at mercy of the celebrities.
Sure. Now that your profile has risen, you have to be more selective, maybe.
The stakes are higher. For example, that's why we split posts up between solo and roundup. A solo post can stand on its own, versus if you're in a roundup, you're not bad, don't worry, keep doing what you're doing, but like, you don't have the esteem to stand on your own necessarily, right?
Yeah. I think also, like, a really big example of the point that you were making about what we can post versus what we can't is if we have a comment that we know is going to be like news breaking or quoted in articles, in our caption, we'll make sure that it's a little bit more PG or there's not a curse in it or anything like that, because if there is, then certain news sources won't embed the link. So we're more conscious of that. Where in the beginning, we didn't know that. We weren't thinking like that. And then there was somebody who said it to us once. They were like, we can't embed it because there's a curse in your caption. We're like, well, we'll just change that right now. So now we're more conscious of that. Yeah. But as for the content we post, I don't think we've like strayed away from what we normally do. Like, if there's something funny that's a little bit pushes the envelope but isn't like offensive or whatever, it's just a little dirty, maybe we'll still post that because we think it's funny and we think that our audience appreciates it.
And how do you guys go about thinking about additions? We've talked about TikTok, we talked about athletes, so like, what goes into that decision? Is there a certain metric, or if it grows to this size, like what's the business thinking that goes into starting something new?
There's definitely no metric. It's not done with any sort of analytics. It's really, like, I know this is not what you want to hear, but it's really a gut instinct. And the way that it started in general, like, I think our first offshoot was athletes, right? Athletes was a little bit more of a natural progression, because it's like, okay, these people are huge, but most of our audience, which is the majority women, don't fully appreciate this kind of content we need to place. But when it came to Bravo or Bachelor, the issue that we found was we kind of tested it. So we would post some, quote, Bravo celebrities on the main page. And the feedback we got was, these are not celebrities. People were really pissed. Like, and not just a few people. Like, that was the majority feedback of, like, kind of stay in your lane type of situation. And we recognized there was a real audience for that, but they weren't our main page audience. So by creating these niche communities, it gives us a lot more freedom. We can post a lot more, not necessarily, they don't have to be as well known on a worldview, because if you watch Bravo, you know who every single person is, regardless of if they're so mainstream. So it allowed us to kind of dive in more into these communities that we had to really pull back on. Like, we couldn't post a Bachelor comment, but Bachelor has a cult following, so why not give those people a place? And, you know, then there's the cultural relevancy aspect, like TikTok, where our audience is not on board yet. Totally, I understand that. I think our audience, or I know our audience is a little older than TikTok's prime demographic, but we think it'll get there, you know?
I imagine that there are others out there who think, you know, we're friends. We talk about pop culture. We like pop culture. We're really smart. We could do this too.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Well, I would say that
Good luck.
No. I always want to encourage people. I think there's no harm in trying it. You never know. And maybe you could, but a podcast is not just as simple as having a conversation, which I think is a common misconception. Or sometimes it is, but it's not. There's a lot of prep that goes into it. Not because, like, we don't plan out our conversations, but you have to fact check and you have to have enough information to feel credible. And it depends what kind of podcast you're trying to have. If you just want to have one that's super casual, you're just talking about your opinions, that's fine. But as far as if you want something that is going to be treated as like a credible news source where people want to go to actually learn about things and they don't have the time to read it, there's a lot of research that goes into it. You have to know about a lot of different things. And, you know, talking about how our degrees came into play, Julie's psychology degree and my social work half degree have been absolutely integral in the podcast, because I can't tell you how conscious we are of things that I think a lot of people in our space wouldn't necessarily be conscious of, but we recognize little microaggressions. We recognize, you know, things that could potentially be offensive to an audience that we may have not been educated on otherwise. And you'd be shocked at how easily offended and how upset people can get. So there's a real level of consciousness that has to be present there. It's not, you know, you can't just say what you would be saying casually because you don't know how it could be offensive to someone.
Yeah, I think that's the part where people kind of overestimate their abilities. I mean, the danger is you guys make it sound so easy. But when you start to pick apart, like I was listening to the episode on Justin Bieber, and the ability for you guys to kind of examine what's going on behind the happenings is a level of not just knowledge and research, but also understanding that, you know, it might seem like just two women talking about some event or series of events, but a lot more goes into that. And I don't think people realize that.
Well, thank you. That's really nice. I appreciate that. And it's true. I mean,
I think definitely. I think something that my parents always said about the reason I went into psychology was they were like, you went into it because you always had that understanding, not you got that understanding because you went into it. So I think that it's for both of us, like, really natural for us to be able to do that, and really natural for us to be able to, like, understand and analyze celebrities that way because we're just so used to it.
Mm-hmm. That's our personalities.
Yeah.
For sure.
I just got a note that it said it's called Bieber woke.
It's called being woke.
I'm like, I thought you said Bieber. We're Bieber here.
Bieber woke.
We
should train
called
her.
being woke.
Yeah. I heard it here first.
I don't talk like that.
Woke is not as easy as a lot of people think.
No, it's
I think
not.
It's more educated than woke, actually.
Yeah, it's a combination.
So going back to, I mean, you guys at the top called this really a media company more than anything else. And I do want to examine that for a second, especially because this is a media company whose platform is social media. Mm-hmm. And social media right now is under quite a lot of fire, you know, and you know, Julie, you talked about Twitter being a place where the conversation really happens. People are sort of unfiltered or less filtered there, maybe. You know, they feel like, let me just try this out. And then Instagram becomes a place where they kind of cultivate it a little bit more, what they're going to say and how it's going to come across. But all of these platforms, I mean, Facebook is the one that people talk about the most because of privacy issues and because of the election hacking and things like that. But even Twitter has come under a lot of fire. There's, you know, issues now with, you know, their CEO being a CEO of multiple companies and wanting to take months off and, you know, travel and all of that. But, you know, how much do you guys spend thinking about the future of these platforms and what it might do to you? I mean, I don't think they're going to change the algorithm back, so that's not going to affect things. But, it's changing. It's sometimes dangerous. It's full of trolls. How do you guys think about those things?
Well, I think that one of the reasons that we say media company and that we strive to be a media company rather than just social media or strictly an Instagram account is because from when we decided that this was going to be a business and not just like a hobby, we knew that we had to grow it so it could exist elsewhere. Like if Instagram disappeared tomorrow, what would we do? And I think that was one of the models that we followed, and that's the reason that we started the podcast part of it, because if Instagram goes away tomorrow, okay, we still have that. So I think that's a huge aspect of it. I think social media is just really unknown. Like I think that it's not, for us, we depend on it, but it's not the most dependable place. So I think to have that knowledge in mind but not panic about it is really helpful for us.
Yeah, like we wanted to diversify without living in fear, Like what benefit does that have? But there's the podcast, like video content we just started to experiment with on other platforms. What could that look like? Growing audiences that exist in other places than just the account, I think is kind of important, which, by the way, we started a Patreon, which, are you familiar with Patreon? Yes. For anybody who doesn't know, it's basically a subscription-based service where people can pay for bonus content from their favorite content creators. And that was really important because it gave us this very, not big at all, but this kind of really tight-knitted community of people that not only enjoy the content, but also really like and believe in us. And that's been so important because it's kind of almost like a big focus group in a way. And just establishing that presence with them, I think, is something we really appreciate for a lot of reasons, but also because that definitely exists off of social media. That's like a human connection kind of thing.
Yeah, that's smart.
Thanks.
Do you guys have opinions on social media and where we are right now in the world?
I mean, I think for all of its flaws, the benefits, the pros outweigh the cons. And I will say that, we've been fortunate enough to spend a lot of time with people who are, higher up at Instagram. And I think, at least I can only speak for Instagram, they have really, really smart people working there. And really, the people that we have known are not only smart and understand the trends, but are also like very morally sound. Like I feel comfortable and safe with a lot of our business. And I recognize there are outside elements, but I'm talking from like an executive standpoint, at least. I can really appreciate some of their values.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know what's going to happen with the world of social media, but I'll tell you something. If you are listening to this and you haven't explored TikTok, I would urge you to, because you're going to start to see a lot more action happening there, not just with celebrities, with businesses, with brand deals. It's almost, I think, crucial actually. If you are like, someone if yourself is your brand, I think it's crucial to be on TikTok.
Okay. Well, I'm still like, the one I'm addicted to most is Instagram, but I will, I'll definitely dabble myself. I want to kind of close with a little bit more on the personal side. Mm-hmm. You guys have taken what was a passion and made it into a business. And it sounds like you guys spend a lot of your time on this. Mm-hmm. Do you have other passions? What are your other things that you love and spend time away from the business doing?
Yes, we have other things. I mean, it's hard.
Can't think of them right now, but
I know. Yeah, I was going to say. I'll give you a minute. I guess for me, I know this is kind of a crazy thing to say because as like a personality trait, but I'm an only child and have always been very close with my parents. My mom passed away August 2018, kind of right when this was all taking off. And my dad is like truly my best friend, like my person, my number one. So when I think of my life, like if I'm dividing my parts of my life, like my dad and my relationship with my dad is such a huge part of everything I do that like that's my hobby. Like when we're not here, I just want to be in Jersey with my dad. It's the reason I luckily have an apartment in the city that I can stay at and I'm here, but I don't live in the city full time because of how much I enjoy being with my dad, not out of guilt really, like, because I just love him. He's my best friend. He's my favorite person. So much so that, like, when we go on our business trips, he comes with us a lot of the time. And then me, my dad, Julie, and Isabel will go, to Palm Springs after or something like that. So I just keeping time for family and friends is more important than your average person, I guess you could say.
Is he going to get to play ping
Bieber?
pong with Justin Bieber?
Let me tell you something from your mouth to God's ears. That is the plan. We got an email last night. I don't even think I said this to you. I got an email last night from this like journalist in Australia, and she was like, "Hi, Emma, I was listening to the podcast and I just wanted to tell you, like, it's not that far off." And she sent me a link, which I haven't watched yet, to a YouTube video from a couple of years ago when she's like, "I can't believe this happened, but it was someone else's dad's dream. And Justin really did it."
Oh.
I was going to say, we have to story that and like tag them.
Wow.
So I think it'll happen.
I hope it happens.
Thank you.
And what about you, Julie?
What about me? I don't know. I feel like everything I do is kind of not in the pop culture realm, but it can be, connected back to that. I feel like any answer compared to like my dad's my best friend is not a great answer.
No.
It's hard to live up to that.
No, Julie.
As a dad.
No,
my dad is also my best friend.
Yes.
If that helps.
Okay.
Yes,
It's his birthday
for sure.
today, actually.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we'll
Happy
call him
birthday.
later.
Call him. Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
I was just going to say that Julie has very simple pleasures in life. Like, you hear like the meme, like, "Oh, I love my bed." Like, Julie really loves her bed. Like, and I mean that in like the most positive
What
way
kind of
ever.
bed do you have?
Oh my God, it's this amazing like 12-inch Tempur-Pedic. It feels like it's like literally like a green tea Tempur-Pedic. It's amazing.
Yeah, like she enjoys rest more than your average person. I don't mean that she does it more. She just enjoys it more. So like for Julie, Netflixing and like laying in her bed is like one of her greater joys in life. Whereas like
very easy to please.
She's very easy to please. Whereas for me, like I think my time away from the business more, and like I really enjoy going to therapy and like Pilates and things like that. Like I guess our mental health stability comes from different places. Right? Is that a good way to say it? Yeah.
But I only ask that question because people rarely get to do a job about the thing that they're passionate about. And I don't mean that people don't get passionate about their job. I'm passionate about my job.
Yeah.
But I'm passionate about sports, and my job is not in sports, right? You guys are doing a job and build a business around the thing you're passionate about. So like I would imagine it would be so easy to just get sucked in that you're doing it, other than when you're sleeping, that's what you're doing.
It's the craziest thing ever. Yes. Like how is
It's not a bad thing.
No, I know.
It's like a great thing. Well, that's the reason that I never, like when I say like my pleasures are, being in my bed watching TV or just hanging out with friends, is because what we're doing for our jobs is so enjoyable every single time that we get to do it that I don't feel like I need to compensate with another area of my life. I feel like that's what I get the most pleasure out of, the most happiness from, the most fulfillment from. So to have that, everything else is just kind of a byproduct or a side thing.
So agree. It's the best. I mean, every day we're like, how is this our job? We are so lucky. Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
Great. We've not done this before, but I have like rapid fire 10 questions about founding a company.
Okay.
Some of which may or may not be relevant, but I'm trying to capture this with founders. So we'll go through them, and it's not meant to be like lengthy answers, just like quick rapid fire. And the first one will be easy. How many companies have you guys founded or co-founded?
One.
Just the one. Okay. And also some of these, if you can't answer, that's fine too. But like, how long from idea to your first 500,000 in revenue?
A while. Over 2 years.
Over 2 years. Okay. How many significant failures, which can be defined as running out or close to running out of money, having no customers, product didn't work, someone else got there first, critical employee left, going down this list, and none of these applies, but whatever you would consider as kind of significant failures did you have in your first 2 years?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't think of any.
Okay. How many distinct pivots, like major changes to your target audience or market or product or business model, did your business make before settling on your current mission?
like 0 to 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Guys hit it out of the park from day one. That's great.
I recognize, by the way, just to anyone, like how idealistic this sounds, and all of these answers, please know, are said with like an overwhelming amount of gratitude. And I recognize this isn't the norm, and like every day we're very appreciative of that.
I think one of the reasons, though, also is because this didn't start out as a business. Like, I think that if we had an idea and we were pushing it forward, then it would be a very different model of like,
Yes.
okay, this didn't work, let's move on to this. It happened, and then it turned into a business, and we're like, all right, we're already here. Like,
Right, yeah.
Turned into a business because it was working.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
sure. A different kind of path. And we kind of talked about this a little bit, but we didn't quantify it. How long from idea to realization that the business was going to take off, that it was going to be a business in your case?
Well, I didn't remember this, but my aunt and Julie told me that when I started, I said to them, we'll have 1 million followers by 2019. And we hit 1 million like January 12th, 2019. So I guess day one, but really about 9 months or so.
What were your biggest challenges once you realized your business was going to take off? Like, so I'm gonna list some and just choose
Yeah.
2 or 3. Raising money, hiring, getting the product ready, finding customers, understanding how to scale, managing cash flow, developing a sales team, developing the rest of the company, operational efficiency. What would you say were the biggest challenges?
Again, I feel lucky that a lot of those don't apply because it's also just a lot simpler of a model. But I think still, although we're really lucky that we connect with brands that understand how we do our ads, getting there, like the sales aspect of it, can be challenging because it's not like we can just send out a one sheet that explains what we do. Like, we need to get on the phone with them. We need them to really understand it. And if you're talking to someone who isn't so familiar with the account, it's a hard sell. It's like, what? You want me to comment something? Like, it's for our generation, it's a lot more common to say, oh, here's our product, take a picture with it, post it. And like, that's not our model. So it definitely, I think on the front end, is a lot more work required.
Another rank or picking things that might be a little bit different as you look back on building this business, rank or pick 3 of the following factors in terms of getting this right for your business. So great product concept, building the right culture, hiring the best people, building the company, understanding how to scale the product concept, developing a marketing message, developing sales support, and ensuring a great customer, in your case, maybe reader experience.
You're saying the 3 that were the most prevalent for us? Like,
that as you look back and you say getting these right, those mattered most.
Well, absolutely. Talk about hiring quote, because thank God I chose Julie as the person I wanted to run it with when this wasn't a business, when it was just a passion, because I mean, that could have been the detriment just from the start. Like, if on day one she wasn't my first thought and she easily could have said no, we would quite literally not be in this place. And that extends to hiring Isabel as the third member of our team, because we're such a unique structure because of how close we are as friends and because of how much confidentiality is involved in what we do, that getting that person right, I think, is crucial. Company culture thing, also huge. Like, the only reason I think it works so well is because of our flow and our vibe and our respect. And then, the enjoyable customer experience one, which I know is different than what typical people on this podcast would probably answer, because ours is meaning, is it enjoyable when you scroll through your feed? I think that one's huge, because even on a very literal level, when we started the account, the way that we formatted pictures was so much less visually appealing, to the point where we can't even look back because it's painful. I mean, we used to circle it with like a red thing before we understood how to lay it out. And that was a huge change. Like, I really firmly believe that if we were still doing stuff in the way that we did it then, there's no way we'd have the following that we do. Mm-hmm. It's a very enjoyable viewing experience, and that matters in the age of social media.
I'll have to go back in time.
Oh my,
please
don't. Please don't. It's really bad.
What singular advantage did you have in launching this business?
A passion that already pre-existed.
What surprises you most about your company today versus what you envisioned when you crossed the threshold and said, oh, this is going to be a business? What surprises you most now versus then?
I'll say mine. That people care about, like, us also, not just the content. Yeah. Like, that people.
Yeah, like when like a news story breaks and somebody will inbox us and be like, we need your take on this. Like, we need you to do it. I'm like, why do you care about us? It's still like weird to me, but.
You still don't want to be celebrities.
Yeah, no.
Last one. When you look, again, let's start at the point where you realize this was going to be a business, not a passion. What does success now look like? What does it look like now versus then? Like then you might have just been like, wow, if we could get this many followers or if we could do this. But now when you look at it, what are the biggest differences?
Well, I think in the beginning, because it was solely Instagram based, success was kind of equivalent with followers. Like you said, really in the beginning it was for a long time there. And now I think success is way more than followers. We want to continue the growth, but like, can there be an engaged audience on multiple platforms? It's one thing to gain 100,000 followers. That's great. But can we also have a really dedicated listenership to our podcast and also members of our Patreon community and potential watchers of video content? Like, that's really what we care more about than just the number. It's like, can we engage these people in multiple ways?
Yeah.
Right?
I'd say that too, definitely.
Yeah.
You guys are great. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, this was so fun. Thank you.
Boy, oh boy, these women are so impressive. Again, their story is so important for entrepreneurs. A passion project turned successful business venture. If we could all be so lucky.
Yeah.
And as you can tell just by listening to them, all this done with a great deal of gratitude and a very down-to-earth approach.
Truly, that was the one thing that stuck out, like, to me. They were like so grateful for everything that's come from this. I loved that.
Yeah, and they gave us some really cool hats too.
They did. Thank you. Thank you, girls, for those.
Yeah, thank you to Emma Diamond and Julie Kramer for joining us on this episode of the Grow Wire podcast, giving us some insight into all that is comments by celebs, Justin Bieber, and all the rest. I also want to thank our editors over at Lampstand who take out all of our mistakes, as well as our producer, Kendall Fisher.
Just one.
Just
It's
one?
me.
It seems like there's more of you than just one sometimes, some days. And as always, thank you, our listeners, for tuning in. Don't forget, rate, review, and subscribe.
Baby, baby, baby.
Okay, we didn't need that.
Oh. You just listened to the Grow Wire podcast with host Fritz Nelson. Make sure to keep tuning in for more episodes full of tips, tools, stories, and strategies to help take your personal and professional growth to the next level. Until next time.